Cooperation in a fragmented world. That's been the tagline of this year's World Economic Forum, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome on BQ Prime the president of the WEF, Børge Brende. Børge, great having you. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for coming here in the cold weather.
Yeah, it is cold, but out here the preparation is quite amazing. Now,
thank you.
Now tell us, Børge. I mean, 2,700 participants, if I'm not wrong, bunch of heads of states, etc. And it's happening at a time wherein climate could not have been a more significant point of discussion. What do you, to your mind, what is the central message that you reckon will come out of the many messages that will come out over the course of the next 4 days?
So on climate, I think we are seeing that the cost of inaction far exceeds the cost of action. We've seen it in India this summer with terrible temperatures. We see it with wildfires. We see it with droughts. We see it also with floods. So we need to walk the talk now to start mitigating CO2. But there are also other alternatives out there that are very, very affordable. Look at how India now is rolling out solar. We will also see more of offshore wind. So there is an energy revolution that will be very good, talking about climate. But there are, of course, a lot of other challenges too.
Yeah, there are. So let me try and first talk about the central message that you started off this whole thing with, which is cooperation in a fragmented world. We couldn't have seen, arguably, in the last few years, the more fragmented world. I mean, it started with COVID, and now we have central banks which are not taking a central decision, so to say, combined decision, and then there's the conflict to watch out for. What is it that you are hearing from participants in the run-up to the event, and what do you hope to have conversations around over the next 4 days on this topic?
No, you're totally right. The world is more fragmented than we have seen in decades. And also the backdrop that this meeting is happening against geopolitically, but also geoeconomically, is more complex than we have seen in decades. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. So what we have to do is to rebuild trust. We also have to cooperate more than just creating new conflicts. And the fragmentation of the global economy is happening at a high cost. We will see recession in many countries this year, lower growth and high debt and high inflation. That's a toxic cocktail.
Yeah, are participants kind of talking about that more actively? And just wondering, is the mood a bit somber than what you would have otherwise hoped for, considering that the Western Hemisphere in particular is on the throes of a recession or a slowdown, whichever term you use?
I think if we met a month ago, it would have been even more somber.
Okay.
In the sense that we're not out of the woods. There's still big challenges. But for example, in Europe, we see inflation now going down for the first time. In Germany, in France, hopefully it has peaked also in the US. That means that we might not see that dramatic increases in the interest rate to come. But we also know that the overall global economy is slowing down. The war in Ukraine is also costing a lot. It has led to energy crisis in Europe. There we also now see the prices going down, and Europe is sourcing energy from different places. But in our view, if we don't mitigate the geopolitical risks, and if we don't start to collaborate, and if we don't get a recovery when it comes to trade and investments, mm-hmm. there will be no recovery out of this slow growth period. And then we can easily end up like in the 70s. We had a decade with low growth, and that has to be avoided.
So how do you think that happens? Excuse me.
So firstly, no more new tariffs and protectionist measures. We still have to trade with each other. Fair that some nations want to nearshore and friendshore, but that will only really apply for maybe 10% of the production. If you want to have more semiconductors produced in your country, you have to have more, you will put on more restrictions on then production that has dual use, both security use and then civilian use. But 90% of the goods can still be then traded with, and also services. So we will need to make sure that we continue to trade and invest with each other. That's a good starting point.
Yeah, most certainly is. And just drawing the conversation towards India a little bit now, Børge, there is tremendous participation. I saw the list of participants in India is a large place out there, and we're seeing this instances or multiple instances of the diversification of supply chains happening, which includes a lot of Asian countries as well. What are you hearing from state heads, government heads, and businesses about that very aspect? Tariffs versus setting up not just nearshoring but offshoring as well.
So in general, the Indian economy is doing very well, especially compared to the rest of the world. So when I was recently in India, I said it's nice to be in a country where there is still optimism around, coming from Europe.
Sure.
So that was a joke aside. I think that India this year will be the fastest growing of the large economies in the world. There's of course no room for complacement, but I don't see that kind of complacence either. What we will also see is there is some more investments in manufacturing in India. I would say maybe friendshoring or maybe nearshoring, depending on how you define that. I think for India moving forward with the demography, there's still a lot of more young people, quite tech savvy people. The competition in the future will really be among those nations that are on top of the new technologies, who have the knowledge and who apply artificial intelligence, machine learning, use the big data that is like the new oxygen in the economy, and commercializes this. And I think India is pretty well prepared for this.
So one is the growth. Sorry, last 2 or 3 questions. One is the growth numbers that that a country does go through, or the economy grows at. 2 is the inclusion of growth, and 3 is what global companies feel about how they want to participate in that growth. Yeah. On the third point, Børge, because you would have a pulse of what global companies worldwide are saying, what is it that is coming out from large corporations about using India or other economies for setting up manufacturing bases or becoming large trade partners with them?
I think there is more bullishness on also investing in manufacturing in India than it was in the past. India was seen as the back office of the world with a lot of um, services. I think now you're also seeing more manufacturing being based in India. I think the government is also working a lot on getting rid of red tape and making it more predictable and more conducive for foreign companies to set up business in India. And I think this will work well for India in the future, for prosperity and also growth. It's very interesting to see that we also do have these meetings during Davos called country strategy meetings, where CEOs can sign up for meetings with the ministers. So very interesting that the meeting we have with the Indian ministers here, 4 cabinet ministers, is the one that has the most sign up. And that even compared to some of the other ones have even head of states present. This time, unfortunately, Modi was not able to come to Davos. We hope for next year.
Sure.
But that shows also the genuine interest now in India.
Wow. My last question, Børge, and that is, I read through an email that I got from WEF about the landmark things that have happened out of this forum, and there were a bunch of them, right? 6 or 8 or 10 landmark things, including Nelson Mandela standing head to head with a person, and so on and so forth. What is it that you hope for this time around? What is it that you believe you plan for this time around the WEF, which could be the standout development of this forum 2023?
I hope that we can agree on a global growth path, how to revive growth. We never had this many finance ministers here in Davos. We have more than 50 of the global finance ministers. We have more than 20 governors from the central banks. We have more than 30 trade ministers. So in the nexus between investment, trade, and a business-friendly growth policy, I think if we can deliver that, we can deliver increased growth. With increased growth, there is increased prosperity, and there is also then better for eradicating poverty.
Yeah, but sorry, just a follow up there. You reckon in a fight against inflation, wherein central bankers want to ensure that inflation goes down, and therefore, even if it comes at the cost of growth, it's fine, that such a thing can happen in 2023? Or is that a slightly dated thing that you're talking about?
So I think there is no a need for a growth policy in a situation where we are faced with, as you said, we have high inflation, um, and based on the high inflation, we have also higher interest rates, less investments, and we are also seeing a slowing global growth. But if we again start to trade with each other, that will also and fix the global supply chains. That will also export deflation again, because in the past we saw that trade also led to the input factor, the prices of the input factors going down. So that's a small piece of a bigger picture. But we also have to think more supply side economics, in the sense that with the new technologies, I think they can also lead to leapfrogging in many sectors. So overall, if we don't get growth back, we will not reach the important targets that we have seen in the Sustainable Development Goals, eradicating poverty, access to water, education, and health for the people. That's why I hope we can achieve something in that field.
Well, wish you all the best for that, and a lovely setup. Thank you so much for having us, and all the best for the rest of the forum.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
Børge.
inviting me.
No, the pleasure is ours, and viewers, thanks for tuning in.